Welcome back, friends. I have my best brother, Reverend Bob Belcher, coming to us from the big island of Hawaii. And I'm so honored to welcome you back again, brother. Thank you for being here and sharing today, Bob.
Aloha, my friend.
What are we going to be talking about today, brother?
I was I was working with somebody not too long ago, and they were running through uh, some fears and anxiety, and I just wanted to share from a spiritual perspective how I was working with it and what it was about. And I'm not a psychologist, as you know. I'm a minister, a spiritual uh, consultant, I guess is the way to put it. Um, and I've been working with these kinds of issues for years. Um, the thing that's always important to remember in all of these communications is that everything is about energy. It's about energy, and I have to come from the place that the people who are tuned into your channel are already at a certain level of awareness that they know that they're spiritual beings in physical bodies having a material experience. Otherwise, I don't think they'd be attracted to the channel, or at least wouldn't stay. And so that's what I'm talking about. That's the area in which I'm talking about. We have one soul. More accurately, we are one soul, and we have many bodies. So, as I've said before, we're not a body in possession of a soul. Oh, my soul. Well, that implies that it is in possession of something
Yeah.
else instead of identifying it as me and my body. Just to kind of separate that out. So we're in these containers, these earth suits, these, I like to call it school uniform at the earth school. Um, and why we're here for this semester.
Yeah.
What happens is that we are pure energy, the purest of energy, because we're connected great to central source energy, God, whatever label you want to put on that. And we're into individuated aspects of that energy, individuated aspects of the consciousness of that energy, to be even more specific. And as such, we have our individual experiences. And I'm not going to get into oversouls and all that kind of stuff. We can, but it's not relevant to the subject at hand. What happens though is that we go through a lifetime, and things can happen. Um, maybe that body gets killed in a car accident or in a war, or some other horrendous or tremendous thing happens. Maybe it doesn't kill the body, but it sure does impact on the heart. Like, oh my goodness, a broken heart, broken business, whatever that is. The soul energy is one that is always projecting its dreams into the future. This is how we're connected to the quantum field. We're connected into that field back to source, and we create our lives through that field. It's a gift we have as ensouled beings. It's an ability that we have, one that is actually not taught to us, because if everybody knew that, we wouldn't need the power structure to do what they do. And I'm not going to mess with those guys, but we wouldn't need them if people really understood how powerful they really are, especially as a collective. But as individuals, we have these experiences, and these experiences are upsetting, and they create a blockage. It's like the energy is going out to create a dream, a business, a life, a relationship, a family, whatever it is, because we're projecting this energy from the great consciousness through our consciousness into manifestation. That's the short version of it. And when something happens that prevents that dream from coming through, especially death and destruction, those are really big ones. That energy that's being projected out gets stuck in a knot out here, away from the source of ourselves. It's still carried with us, it's carried within us, but it's it's something that is stuck, is tied up. And so we don't get to have that energy because it's tied up in a knot. It's in a shock. And I'll leave it right there, and I'll tell a couple of stories about people I've worked with and what happened. And I may have told this one before, but there was a woman I was working with some years ago, an island girl, who would not go near a body of water. She would go to the beach, but wouldn't get within 50 feet of the water. She'd take a shower all day long, but wouldn't get into a bathtub or a swimming pool. Anything that was a body of water, wouldn't get near it. So we were actually working on a different issue, but this issue came up because when you're working on these types of things, what the soul personality needs to process the most is going to come to the forefront. It's just kind of, bubbles to the top kind of thing.
Yeah.
This woman had a lifetime as a Spanish woman in the Spanish colonies in the 1600s. She was on a ship on her way back to Spain with her children. There was an explosion on the ship. It sank almost immediately. She was left hanging and floating on a spar, and eventually came to the denizens of the ocean, sharks and so on. And it was just a horrific, horrible death that she experienced. They probably couldn't get too much worse than that. And it created a huge shock in her system. And as a result, she wouldn't go near an open body of water, but she didn't know why. She was spiritually reacting to a large body of water. She had an anxiety about large bodies of water. We were able to go through protocols that I've been trained in, and we're able to remove that shock, just kind of blow it out. That energy returned back to her being. And within a month, she was in a swimming pool taking swimming lessons. This is a source of anxiety. It's a spiritual thing. The center that I was working in, which no longer exists, which is a shame, but the director of our center was working with a woman who was from California. She was a Caucasian woman. She was in real estate. She was working with Japanese clients and could not seem to make any headway. In fact, she kind of dreaded every appointment she had with her clients. And anxiety. It turned out that she had lived in Japan a couple hundred years ago, had some kind of horrendous experience there. The energy of that was blown out. And get this, she spontaneously started speaking Japanese right there in the office, and she had never spoken a word of it before. And she became a very wealthy woman working with Japanese clients in real estate. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is anxiety from a spiritual perspective. My wife was working with a woman who was having a tremendous amount of difficulty. She was about 5'4" or 5" and weighed over 200 pounds, and blew out a shock on something. Again, she was having balance problems walking, anxiety connected to working with people, and blew out the incident that happened with her. It turned out this woman was a gymnast in a former lifetime, had been seriously injured in a gymnastic accident. And this very rotund woman started doing backward walkovers in the office and trying to walk on a balance beam. And she was doing it perfectly, but she could barely walk coming into the session. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, anxiety from a spiritual perspective. We have these things that have happened to us, and we don't process them out. Maybe the counseling technology wasn't available at that time. Who the heck even thinks about these things?
Yeah.
This is not an everyday thing. Oh, I had a car accident. Maybe I should go talk to a spiritual counselor. I don't think people have those kinds of thoughts. They usually come to me 200 or 300 years later. A little late, but hey, better than never. But I wanted to put it out that if you're having anxiety about an issue, about an area of your life, and it just things just aren't really working for you, you may want to look a little deeper than your standard psychologist, because most standard psychologists don't work with past life issues. It's just not part of their training. And when I was teaching, now we're talking a whole bunch of years ago, but we had both psychologists and psychiatrists in our classes, and these were licensed people who had clients every day,
Mhm.
and they had never heard the kind of techniques we were talking about, because we were coming from a spiritual perspective. They were coming from a mind body perspective. We were coming from a spiritual mind perspective. I kind of like the way my wife says it best. She says, "This body is not who I am, it's where I am."
Yeah.
And so it's a way of looking at things. And we gave them some of our entry level techniques, and they said, "My goodness, we've got more case gain in 2 weeks than we have in the last 6 months. Like, what is this stuff that you guys are teaching?" Um, anyway, so I just wanted to put that out. If you're having issues, really might be a good idea to find a good spiritual counselor and see what you can do and see what kind of things you can work out. I'm not doing that work anymore. I've been asked to. I don't know that I really want to, but I don't know that I don't. I don't know that it's not a case of willingness. It's more a case of time. And but I wanted to let your viewers know that there's other things involved than just dealing with these bodies, that there's a whole other area. And as you and I have talked before, I said there's two kinds of people in the world: those who are awake and those who are still stuck in the trance, especially the media induced trance. And I have to allow for the possibilities that those of us who think we're awake are just in a different trance. I have to allow for that to be among the possibilities.
Yeah.
But I just want to say there's some hope for people who are suffering, and that there's other ways to look at it, and that's what I wanted to share.
Well, there's a lot there, and I'm sure that it's resonating with many of our viewers who, by the way, I thank you for viewing. And you touched on things that you'll recall that last year I became the first male certified fast track practitioner.
Yes, working with jazz. Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we both admire jazz very much.
Mhm.
And the fast track technique is sort of a polished, honed, streamlined hybridization. And then it has come into its own through jazz as well. A method of, well, I came to this realization from my own, practice of the fast track
Mhm.
technique, and I've shared it with Jazz, who loved it. Fast track technique is a method of engaging the higher self to access the unconscious mind, to
Yes.
identify, to release, and reprogram whatever issues are there to work with. And in that context, we have identified cellular trauma and cellular memory as two very huge areas of work in within this modality of releasing, of liberating yourself from things. And this is, on one hand, very simple, the streamlined aspect, and on the other hand, you are going so deep that it is literally and almost always deeper than you were ever aware was that there was even anything there. You're going way, and that's why they call it the unconscious, because you're not conscious of it. But like the iceberg, most of what's going on is below the surface of the water. Or we could use the Mauna Loa example, even more appropriate. the vast majority of Mauna Loa is far below the sea level. And a good
Yeah,
friend of
about
mine
eight
on the Big
miles, the
Island,
whole, yeah,
uh,
yeah, it's huge.
yeah, as a friend of mine on the Big Island says, it's so huge that it is crushing the Earth's crust. You know, the continental plate is actually,
It's true. Yeah,
and on the
5 miles.
top you have this magnificent, pyramidal peak that you think is the whole deal. That's just the lid.
Right, right. It's that mountain, what this island is made up of 5 volcanoes, and that mountain makes up half of it. It's, I mean, the surface of the Big Island is 4,000 square miles. That means that Mauna Loa is 2,000 square miles, just on the looking
Yeah,
down on it. It's almost 14,000 feet high, but it's 8 miles worth of mountain by the time you go from where the base is through the ocean floor and through the ocean. So yeah,
yeah.
it's huge.
So
And
metaphorically
and
speaking,
just
we
to
live in the
acknowledge you
surface.
for a second, and just to acknowledge you, I'd forgotten all about fast track, and I remembered when I was going through it with Jazz, I went, my goodness, this is the effectiveness of this is what I was doing and spending an hour to 90 minutes in session with a client, and she's doing it in 15 minutes with I don't even know what she's doing and it's working. So if you have anxiety, folks, go see Brian. That's what I'll tell you.
If you need someone to relate, you mean, or to help you release,
No,
maybe.
to release, just if you're having issues like that, Brian, the fast track is so effective. And from how I was working, it was very question answer, very formal, very protocol. And with how you're working really with just the energy, and it bypasses the client having to look and having to understand and having to grab a hold of things. It just blows it out, and people are just healed, and they don't have to remember all the trauma, because a story is a story. That's not important. It's what happens energetically that releases one from the trauma.
Yeah. And Percy here will vouch for this. um,
I would think so. I can see those ears. I know that Perky is just that.
well, this cellular trauma and cellular memory is basically the energetic imprint of whatever traumatic event occurred. And in many cases, we literally do not remember what it is at all. And that's why we delve so deeply into the unconscious. And I personally suspect that at a certain level, the unconscious is soul. I think soul and mind are like levels of the ocean depths.
Absolutely. No
Yeah,
two ways. Yes, sure.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not just the imprint, though. It's what you said about that bundle of energy kind of pent up, tied up. That bundle of energy is still there,
Yeah. Yeah.
awaiting resolution.
Think of it. Yeah. Think of a like a hose that's a fuel hose or something with a knot in it.
Right.
That's kind of what it is. And so what happens is lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, trauma after trauma after trauma, we're not operating at full capacity. We're operating at a fraction of our capacity. Um, and this is the time in this time period that we're in right now, where issues like this, if they can be addressed, should be addressed. And oh, I can't afford it. I don't have the money. Well, I tell you what, it costs you a lot more money to not be operating at peak efficiency than it does to go see somebody and get it handled. And the thing is that people don't know that it exists. They don't know the option exists. They're running around carrying their burdens and not understanding that they can release these burdens in a very safe and effective way. Um, I thought it was kind of humorous. Years ago, I came across an article, and it was talking about people getting as much psychological relief from talking to the hairdresser or their bartender as they did the psychologist. I just thought that was very interesting, but it's about expressing the kinds of things that we're talking about. This woman I was talking about had no idea that she had been on a ship that sank. No clue. She didn't say, hey, I was on a ship that sank and could you help me out? That wasn't it. We were talking about something else. And the questions that I was asking directed her mind, and this incident blew to view. And we dealt with it. With what you're doing, it's much more effective. And yeah, it's
Well,
good stuff.
there's a lot that can be traced to, we say this lifetime, another lifetime. Of course, we both understand that we have one lifetime and it involves a tremendous amount of incarnations. Okay, just to be clear. So some of the things that we're carrying and suffering from now, as far as the cellular trauma, cellular memory, spiritual anxiety as a general term, could be directly traced to an event or accumulation of events in this time around, this incarnation.
Right.
But it's amazing how many are from previous ones. And sometimes it's not from the last one, it's from 4, 7, 12
Oh,
incarnations ago, meaning you've
even
lived
more.
under its effect for several of your incarnations. You're not just dealing with this
Uh,
now. You've carried this thing immeasurably long, amount of time.
I have worked with people who carried that trauma for over 2,000 years.
And how
I
many
mean, it's just
incarnations was that? I mean, that might be
100,
20
200, I
lifetimes,
don't know.
you know.
How many lifetimes? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, from a spiritual perspective, there's only now. There is no then.
Hmm.
There's no used to be or going to be. It's just now.
Yeah.
And from a certain level of understanding, it's all happening simultaneously because there's only now. But we do live in a linear timeline, and that's what we have to deal with. And so
Yeah.
we tend to see things from that perspective. And it's kind of, I mean, as I said to somebody, you can't prove tomorrow and you can't show me yesterday. There's only now.
Yeah.
You can show me a
Yeah.
photograph, show me a photograph. You're not showing me yesterday. So it's it's just something that I thought, we should bring out on the out in the public and let people know that there are techniques. I'm so glad you brought up fast track. It's so much more efficient than what I was doing.
Well,
Uh,
credit to Jazz for that. And
yeah.
it's it's another thing that you reminded me. You said that, the issue that we uh, are looking to resolve, or the issue that needs resolving, often just comes right to the forefront of our life and just, drops itself on your face, so to speak. And you
Mm.
reminded me, I hope I credit this correctly, to Pema Chodron. The obstacle is the path. So if you have a very obvious hang up or issue or trigger, whatever it is, oh, there's that thing again. Okay, there's your work. There's your work. That is the next stone on your stepping path.
Exactly.
Definitely. If
It
it's
wouldn't
very
be coming up
obvious.
if you didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah. And as she definitely, Pema Chodron said, it will keep coming up until you resolve it, release it, transcend it. It's just going to keep coming around because it's yet unresolved. And so with the matter of the cellular trauma, actually, in carrying this through several incarnations until it is released, it gets literally written. Now I'm going to speak metaphorically, but I mean it also in a literal way, but I can't explain it well enough. So I'll just speak metaphorically. It gets written into your spiritual DNA. It gets written into a repetitive,
Mhm.
reproducing cycle, like a loop, like a DJ
Absolutely.
would loop something. It gets looped. And until you hit play again, it's gonna loop, and it's gonna be at at play. It's gonna be at in effect in your being, like a program that you forgot is running in your computer in the background, that's eating up all your RAM, slowing down your connections and processes and everything else. It's just draining. And so it's so relieving and liberating as you portrayed, especially with the woman that was, suddenly doing gymnastics and all that kind of stuff. And then,
Oh,
you know,
fabulous.
it returns that flow of energy back to you rather than squandering it out somewhere else.
Yeah, it allows channels of knowledge, energy, information, memory, all that becomes open and just starts flowing back. And especially like we were just saying, there's only one, you have one existence,
Mhm.
many bodies that you cycle through to have that one existence.
And
And it's
the other aspect, Bud, and this is huge, and it correlates very well. There are cellular traumas and cellular memories and spiritual anxieties that you are carrying, which are not yours. That's huge. This is
yeah,
something that has been inherited in your spiritual lineage and also the physical lineage of your bloodline. It can be
that's I was getting to that.
both. Yeah,
Yeah, I was
it can
getting to
come from
that.
your bloodline and spiritually. And what's the Bible verse? The sins of the father are passed on to the sons. I'm paraphrasing. And,
Yeah,
and it's not just father, it could be
visited
grandmother,
upon your son.
anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that Valerie and I were talking about one night, and she just really hit it. Um, there is who we are as a spiritual being, and all of the stuff, past lives, etc., and so on. That's in there, and then it joins into the physical being, and that physical being has cellular memory. It's passed down genetically. It's actually there, and because we choose our family, our life, etc., before we come in based on our lesson plan. I always think of it as sitting down with the guidance counselor and go, so what do I have to learn this time? Well, incarnate in that family, you got that one, okay. But
Or what do I
it,
have to release this time is another one.
right, whatever,
Yeah.
however that is, but what do I have to do? That's why I say you can't go home without your earth work done. You want to, you come here for a purpose, and that's part of it. So yeah, it's like there's that cellular trauma that's familial, and it's passed down. And then when you hook up to it, these two things mesh. I heard I heard a fellow who had gone through an NDE experience, and he said that it felt like Velcro when he left his body. It felt like like Velcro being ripped,
Yeah.
and he said it's kind of a momentary sensation. Then it was over. I think there's only two people I've heard say that. Other people just don't have any sensation; they're just leaving their bodies. But anyway, I thought that was interesting, and I really appreciate what you and Jazz do with the fast track, and the other practitioners. I think that they should be half the world lined up waiting to come through your to work with you, and to, well, at least a quarter of the world. We leave some for other people to work with. But
Well, let me offer this. There are traits or tendencies or proclivities or patterns that we can see carried down through lineages, which might be biological, might be spiritual, might be biospiritual. Um,
mhm.
One example is victimhood, perceiving yourself as being a victim. And that carries through generations. I've noticed that in my sessions. It is definitely generational. You're not the first one, guaranteed, who sees themselves this way as vis-a-vis society, humanity, the collective. Another one might be addiction, or, for example, alcoholism. This will carry down through generations. It's a fact. It's there, and
Tobacco also, cigarettes.
yeah, addiction, whatever form. There may be a favorite, but addiction in general, and
Mhm.
um, it reminds me, if you watch, like that old show Cops, or if you watch these drug bust videos on YouTube or something like that, so consistently you will see someone getting arrested and saying, "Oh, it's not my pants. I don't know what that bag of white powder is. It's not mine. These are not my pants. I'm just holding it for somebody, or I just borrowed these pants. It's not mine." And what do the police say? Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah, you're wearing them.
So, okay, even though we know in that case, they're, you know, they're bluffing, but Possession is 9/10 of the law. Think of that in the spiritual sense. It might not be yours, but it was passed on to you and you're carrying it.
Right.
So it is affecting you, excuse me. It is affecting you as if it's yours. It might as well be yours because, it's like somebody tosses you a flaming ball of fire and you catch it and hold it. You're burning. Oh, this isn't mine. Okay, well, as long as you hold on to it. So the good news is you can release these things if you are open, receptive, willing, and patient, even in some cases, to identify and not always, but a lot of times explain what it is. Although sometimes that information is not given, it's blocked because it would be detrimental or counterproductive to know that right now. In other words, don't open that right now. We're just here to let this go. But
Right.
the good news is that when you do truly release some entangled issue within you like this, you not only free yourself, but you prevent your progeny, your children, your future offspring from carrying it. You've stopped it in its tracks. And not only that, but you have liberated all who came before you in your lineage who had carried it. And because they were unable to resolve and release it, passed it on to you.
Mhm.
So when you break that chain, it breaks in both directions, in front of you and behind you. And I've had the personal experience of an issue that was carried for 14 generations, which was the biggest I've seen yet. And when that broke, uh, it was just like collapsing into a heap of relief and bliss. It was sobs because I have felt what that chain breaking in both directions is. And it's incredible. So many of our viewers who are watching now will understand when you heal, when you heal you don't only heal you, you heal everyone in front of you, all that would come through you, your future children, your progeny. Also, you greatly impact energetically on a vibrational frequency everyone around you, not just
Yes.
a handful of people in your house.
No.
We're talking community, residential area. We're talking hundreds.
There's
We're talking
entire
thousands.
planetary.
Yeah, yeah. And the lower your frequency is, and it does affect everyone, no matter where your frequency is, high or low, you are affecting people. But fortunately, the higher it goes, the more people it reaches.
Yes.
So you're not only healing you, you're healing those who come through you, and you're healing those through whom you have come.
Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely.
multidimensional healing.
Yeah. And when you get into the whole thing of energy from the heart, energy from the soul, energy, it's because it's all energy. Yes, absolutely. It impacts all the way through everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
It's more than the ripple that you toss the stone into the pot.
yeah,
It's more than that.
yeah,
But that's the closest analogy we can get in the physical world. The thing about it is, Brian, is that the the one of the biggest secrets I have found is that people don't really understand who they are. They don't understand their spiritual nature. Not to knock religions, they have their place, but when you tell somebody that they have a soul, it's confusing because it's like you're telling them they have who they are, and
yeah,
it sets up a strange thing in the mind where they can't grasp a hold of it. And I've talked to people who are very indoctrinated in their religion, and bless them. I mean, better to have faith in something than faith in nothing. I totally acknowledge religion in its place, but it's actually an entry point. It's a starting point. It's not the end point. And as I've said many times, religion is really great at having all the answers that it thinks it has. Uh, but spirituality is one about asking questions.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a friend of mine who is an amazing medium, and she gets oh, acronyms all the time. How does this work? How does that work? How is an acronym for heaven open wide.
Okay.
And so it's the idea of, I start asking questions just in your mind. Well, what's this? What's this? What's that? If you keep
Yeah.
asking and you're willing to have an answer, chances are pretty good it'll come to you.
If I could, I would turn that a little bit differently. I wouldn't say ask yourself in your mind. I would say send the question.
Oh, wasn't saying ask self. I mean, ask.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
I like to call it send the question. Like we've talked about, what is the lesson? What am I learning?
right. What am I
You're
learning?
sending that out to spirit to be received at the level of higher self.
Yes.
And higher self is just the purest degree of your soul, the interface of the divinity that created us. It is your interface where the that which we consider to be me meets that which we consider to be thou. So yeah. But now this friend of yours, you said she's a medium. You reminded me. Did you see the recent headline about the
I know this one.
the recent headline of the midget psychic who escaped prison?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the headline read "Small Medium at Large." Okay.
Yes.
I don't want any hate comments for using a politically incorrect word and all that. We're just having a chuckle here. Um, and
Yeah,
I think,
frankly, if you're politically correct, you probably don't understand this channel anyway. So
yeah, and I don't do politically correct, and I don't do. There's a lot of things I don't do. If it compromises reality or truth or authenticity, then I don't do it. And sometimes authenticity is not liked by some and loved by others and whatever. But at
well,
least to be always authentic.
we already did an episode on agreed upon reality, so we'll
Yeah,
leave that
yeah,
alone.
yeah. So
You can refer back to a previous episode though if you want more.
yeah, yeah, and there are over 120 at this point, with a gargantuan ratio of 4 subscribers per video. Wait, what? Who said that? I did happen to notice that ratio and was kind of, oh, wow. But anyway, thanks to those who do subscribe. It helps other people to find us. I don't get
Yeah.
anything, but I don't ask anything. This is just an offering, but it is very warm and fuzzy to know that you watch and that you appreciate, and a very minute fraction sometimes even comments about that, and you are the cream of the crop. You help to keep this going. And if the question ever arises, why am I doing this again? Your comments answer that question. So I want to thank
Well,
all of you. And I want to thank you again, Brother Bob, coming from the big island of Hawaii. And you are always welcome here forever and as often as you ever wish to pop in.
well, thank you so much, my friend. And as we say in the islands, ahui ho.
Ahoy.
Aloha.